I am here with Shahzia, and the first time I saw Shahzia was an HR or disruptive HR talk where she really hit the point home where you really have to think about outside the box on how you find your candidate pool and a different way of recruiting and selecting. So when I was creating this series, she was the first person that I thought of as well, that it would be a really good, interesting conversation. So I really look forward to that. Shahzia, thank you so much for joining us. For those that don't know who you are, can you just give us a little bit about yourself, sort of how you got into this whole recruitment and selection role, and sort of just walk us through how you ended up here today?
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Adam. This is so great to connect with students and talk about a little bit about my journey into recruitment. It is probably very similar to a lot of people in the sense that I didn't go out and pursue recruitment as a career path. I had known about 6 years ago that HR was an area that I was most interested in. And I had been given some advice that recruitment was a really great stepping stone into building a long-term career into human resources, and was living out in Vancouver, had pursued a master's degree out there at UBC in education with the intention of going into corporate training and workplace learning, and had fallen into an opportunity with an aviation company out there through some experiences that I had prior to moving out there, working in their investor relations group. And I had left that opportunity after about 4 months because it was temporary and not really sustainable for my financial situation while I was trying to go to school at the same time and live in very expensive Vancouver. And ended up taking another job for a year, but kept in touch with the person that led me in that 4 month term at the aviation company. And an opportunity opened up in talent management that I was really excited about, thought I would be the perfect fit for, even though I really didn't have the right experience to take on an opportunity like that. But through the referral process, was able to connect with one of the recruiters at that organization, build a really great connection with that individual just over the phone through a number of different conversations. And the talent management role didn't work out, but he called me back a few days later to offer me a 4 month recruitment coordinator opportunity. And I said, absolutely. I really want a foot in the door. I want to take on this opportunity, even though I'm a very proud introvert, and being in recruitment was not necessarily something that I thought would be ideal because it would probably really be uncomfortable and exhausting for me. And 4 months turned into now almost 6 years. And I have the pleasure now of leading a team of 9 recruiters and really looking at strategy and a lot of different disruptive ways in which we are approaching the recruitment process, and really exciting to have built a career in this part of HR, which I think is one of the most critical and important factors in the employee life cycle experience, as well as our brand as an organization as well.
Absolutely, and this is one of the main points that I wanted to bring you on. You do really have a unique recruitment and selection process. So just if you can give me, we're gonna throughout the interview, we're gonna go sort of deep down into sort of a step by step. But if you can just walk me through the process sort of from start to finish of you have a job posting. How do you form, or you have an open position? How do you decide sort of how to create that job ad? Where do you post? How do you sort of select people, the interview process, and then ultimately the hiring decision? So just a general, large, big picture overview, and then we'll go deep down, sort of step by step after that.
Yeah, absolutely. So ideally, we get involved in the process before a position even opens up, before there's a vacancy. That's sort of the most big picture, ideal scenario that we would want in the bigger picture of the long-term strategy, where the recruitment partners are actively engaged with the business and they know about what might be coming down the pipe so that we can kind of get in front of things. But if that isn't the case, which it isn't primarily, about 75 to 80% of the time, my team gets requests through different parts of the business. And we automatically sit down with the leaders to really assess whether posting a position is the right approach and how do we actually position the role. we look at a job posting as a really great marketing and branding opportunity where we don't necessarily want a laundry list of every single responsibility that could ever possibly come up for that individual, but really look at it as an opportunity to sell the organization as well as to sell the potential impact of a role. And we're very mindful of the language that we use about how in which we actually advertise an opportunity and making sure that the talent partners that I work with are really active in ensuring that they're not just waiting for people to come to them, that they're actively sourcing and engaging with the leaders to ensure that the leaders are also actively engaged in the process with them. And so it's a real partnership. That's the way we look at recruitment. And the way I've always looked at it is that it's not something that hiring leaders hand off to recruiters, but it's rather a consultative process that starts from the very beginning, where you're really thinking mindfully about how you're positioning a particular role and how are we going to target it to get it in front of the right eyes. Generally from there, whether there's a sourcing plan in place and there's an opportunity to really start to advertise through different mediums, whether it's through LinkedIn or job boards or things like that. From there, we go through a bit of an assessment process to ensure that there is an opportunity for the talent partner to engage, to learn more about that individual. We do that through a number of different mediums. We have a video interviewing platform that we use right now called HireView that we're piloting out. And that's a one-way interview process. That is an option that we do entertain. It's not perfect for every single role, but it is for quite a few. We also have the process of a pre-screen. So it's a two-way dialogue. It's usually about a half-hour conversation and an opportunity for the recruitment partner to really engage with potential candidate, sell them on the organization, and really understand the process or understand the candidate's background and experience. And I should say as well, from the process of actually creating the posting, there's something called an intake meeting that we do ensure is done. So it's really just an upfront conversation with the leader to understand more about the role, understand their particular hiring style and their leadership style, learn more about that actual team to understand the right dynamics of what would really fit and what would allow that team to actually really thrive. And from there, it's a really great opportunity for the recruitment partner to get insight on whether this particular leader tends to hire the exact same type of person, or they do really value that diversity of thought and there's an opportunity to infuse more of that. Or maybe there's an opportunity to provide that leader some coaching and perspective on the types of personality and energy that would really help lift the team up. And so it's really that upfront investment of time in the beginning, what we call the intake meeting, that is really critical to the rest of the process. So from there, we shortlist things down after we've gone through resumes and pre-screen. We bring people in for in-person interviews. Occasionally, there are things like assessments that we ask candidates to go through. And occasionally, through our actual recruitment process, we do ask candidates to show up a little bit differently outside of traditional put in a resume and a cover letter. We like to really see the authentic side of individuals. And so we've had requests for videos, for presentations, for different things that showcase who that person is. And it allows our shortlisting process to be a lot more seamless and a lot easier. We go through an interview process. Like I said, sometimes there's assessments. There's other tools that we utilize to ensure that we are looking for the best fit for the opportunity. And from there, there's a process of ensuring that everyone that was involved in the interview process from a candidate perspective is informed of the decision, why things move forward from there. And then there's often a lot of involvement upfront with the onboarding process as well. The talent partner is usually there to be able to hand things off, and they're that first point of contact for that candidate. And so there's a relationship built there. And oftentimes it's handing it over to the HR business partner and to the leader to take accountability from there, but really ensuring that that candidate has all the information that they need to be making the right decision and moving forward through the offer process.
All right. So yeah, you have it sounds like you have a very in-depth process. And one of the things that the textbooks teaches is have some kind of process in place, checks and balances, ranking systems. And it just assumes that you have infinite amount of resources and time. Is there something that, just realistically speaking, you know that you can't do, but if you're given infinite amount of time and resources, you would like to add to your process?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that is a core value of mine as a recruitment professional is really trying to get to the authentic human behind the resume and behind the cover letter. a lot of times as candidates, really taught through the job seeking process that they have to very much conform to this idea of a two-page resume, doing what they've always been taught and never really questioning whether that's appropriate or that works. So if I could eliminate resumes altogether and really just create a process where candidates can tell their story in the way that makes sense for them. So whether that's through a video, it's through social media, it's through other sort of platforms that demonstrate the skills that they bring to the table. If time and resources were no issue, that would definitely be where I'd want to invest, because you see people stepping up in a very, very different way when they're given that framework of being able to demonstrate their strengths in a way that isn't conform to the traditional process. And right now we do that sporadically for a lot of different roles that we have, but it's not something that is consistent because it does ask a lot of candidates and it asks a lot more of my talent partners, because there is that investment and involvement in really sitting down and assessing sort of people from different perspectives outside the traditional experience lens that you could probably quickly gauge from a resume.
Absolutely. So part of the process that you spoke about was sitting down and creating that job posting.
Mhm.
A lot of people, take the shortcut and take the job description and then just post it on. How important do you think the job posting is, and what elements make it important?
I think it's one of the most important factors that go into the process because it's that first impression. And a lot of times it's a miss for companies where there's an opportunity to talk about what makes you different as an organization. And there's an opportunity for the leader to also get engaged and involved in the process of talking about themselves. We always say that it's never something that should be an easy decision for someone to change a job. And a lot of times we treat it very transactionally. And that job posting is an opportunity to really provide a key lens and an insight into you as a leader, into the organization, and into the opportunity to really draw people in who have quite like-minded values, is what I would sort of look at it as. Whenever I'm hiring, the last time I did a hiring round, I made sure that there was involvement from me as a leader to showcase who I am, so that someone who's looking at it from a candidate perspective may watch. I did a short little video that I created through a free app that I found online, and provided a lot of context into my vision as well as into who I am as an individual. And some people may have opted out of the process because they just didn't think they could necessarily work with me, and that's okay. It's something that we definitely encourage, because there's an opportunity to brand yourself as an individual, as a leader, and as an organization.
Where would you typically post once you've created the job ad, the branding, the sort of why you're different? Where would you, or where do you normally post those positions? What are
Yeah,
your go-tos?
it really depends on the role itself. When I think about some of the roles that might be standard to the industry, there's professional designation, sort of platforms and organizations that you can post with. We do a lot of post-secondary advertising as well through the alumni networks. There's a new site that we've been receiving a lot of interest from. It's called Jobble, I believe it is. And that one seems to be quite useful for us in the emerging technology space as well. And then, of course, LinkedIn, it's one that we utilize quite a bit, especially in the type of work that I do currently in the industry that I'm in. It's quite a useful platform for me to utilize. And then there's different ones really focused on technology. There's one called Tech Vibes that we use a lot. Not necessarily the standard ones that you would find locally. We would sort of look at some of the local job platforms in different places, like even Facebook groups and things like that for some of our more rural communities and the rural hiring that we do, because it really just depends on what platform that particular community utilizes. And we find in a lot of the smaller towns, Facebook is a really great one. If you can get included in one of the groups for certain areas, that's definitely a great avenue to utilize. And of course, we do encourage the leaders to utilize their own networks and their own platforms through their own branding and social media, through Twitter and LinkedIn and those things like that. And we try not to leave it just completely up to the talent partner to manage, but that there's a partnership with the leader to get the word out as much as possible. But primarily through LinkedIn is where we find most of the success lately.
Right. And so just let's just talk about that for a little bit, because you do use a unique way of attracting candidates. So you create groups on LinkedIn and from what I'm understanding also on Facebook. Is it similar what you do on LinkedIn and Facebook? So if we talk about LinkedIn, you do the same kind of strategies on Facebook?
Yeah,
Okay,
so
so
the
just walk
Facebook
me through
one,
that LinkedIn groups and how you
sure.
get candidates interest that way.
Yeah, for sure. So through the LinkedIn groups, there's a couple of different groups and communities that we run right now at the organization that I'm with. And the primary purpose of those groups is really to engage with candidates, but it's a lot of it primarily through pushing content out to them. And so it's really giving people sort of that slice of life insight into what it's actually like to be an employee for this particular organization. So it's moments that happen at the office, it's different trends that we see happening in the industry. It's different moments that are happening throughout the organization. So whether it's a leaders all in meeting where a team or potential team member could get insight on the fact that we're a very transparent organization and we connect everyone through technology, and we try to make a very mindful effort of communicating on a regular basis. It's moments like that where you wouldn't necessarily get that kind of information through a standard traditional job posting. We like to use the LinkedIn groups as a supplement to that, to be able to provide people that insight and that lens on what it's actually like to work for the organization. So we push a lot of content out, and we have individuals that have joined our communities where we like to see how they engage with us as well. So are they taking the initiative to post content that might be relevant, useful, interesting to people in that particular industry or in the industry that we are in? Or are they commenting on some of the things that we post and engaging with us? And we utilize the LinkedIn platforms as sort of a first sort of step in terms of engaging and connection. And where possible, we like to take things offline as well. So we do things like what we call as hangout events in person at our office locations here in Calgary, as well as in Edmonton as well, where people can really get an insider perspective on who we are as an organization, get to know the team they might be potentially joining, really build those face-to-face connections and take the online offline so that there's a real opportunity to connect in a more meaningful way. But we look at the online LinkedIn groups as an opportunity to build a bit of buzz and to add a little bit of value to what might be a more traditional standard job posting.
So the Hangouts aren't an interview. You're inviting potential future candidates to come to the offices and hang out. Like what do they do when they hang out at the office?
So one of the groups that we run, the Hangouts are used actually primarily as an interview platform, but in a more casual kind of networking style format. So individuals will be invited through the LinkedIn community. We obviously get RSVPs and ensure that we know the number that are going to be showing up. And we have team members from that particular group come as well, so they can do a little bit of a Q&A, sort of a panel style interview process where the team members that are currently in that role are interviewed in terms of what does your day-to-day really look like? What can you tell me about what this actual opportunity or what this company is like? And then there's an opportunity for the team to just sort of highlight who really stood out to them in terms of the networking process, or those folks that asked really good questions in person that showed up really well. And there's a bit of a democratic process around everybody being able to provide perspective on who they think would be a really great fit within the team. So that particular group, the Hangouts are really just another way of calling it an interview, but in a less formalized, less stuffy kind of perspective, and truly represents the brand of the organization that I work for. On the flip side, we have another community that the Hangouts are there primarily for people to get an inside lens on our culture and our perspective on who we really are as an organization. We're really proud of the facilities that we have. So we bring people into our building, and it's a real wow for folks in terms of, traditionally expecting one particular type of facility, and they come into our organization and it's really quite different. So that's a way for us to brand ourselves in a really unique way. And it also helps us to help leaders build pipelines of talent where you could be holding a hangout that's particularly on a specific topic, and you're engaging potential talent to come into the organization, to see the building, to connect with you in a very informal capacity that isn't necessarily connected directly to one particular job, but to get to know one another. And so that may be more a traditional hangout type of perspective. than the flip one.
And I'm just trying to piece, where would the looking at the resume, the screening of the resume come in, before the Hangout invitation or after?
So primarily when we're looking at the one group that uses the Hangout as the primary focus of hiring, that's looked at before, as well as after, to ensure that there's alignment in terms of
So
does this
how do
person.
you pre-screen those resumes?
It's actually something that we utilize LinkedIn for. We don't even look at a resume in a traditional capacity in that kind of a Hangout environment. And one of the reasons we do that for that particular team is it's a digital team. They're very active online. They have to be present. They have to connect with people over the phone and in digital platforms. And so we want people who have a strong LinkedIn presence, that have put some effort into building a bit of a brand for themselves online, whether it's even just building a LinkedIn profile that's robust enough for us to know whether this is a person that we'd want to bring on board. It's a kind of a entryway, minimum expectation that we require for that team, that they have that almost savviness with being able to utilize platforms like LinkedIn in the right kind of way. For the other one, the other community that we hold, that we run, we again encourage leaders to be really active and network and build their brands online. And a platform like LinkedIn is such a fantastic one where you can really engage and get to know somebody in a very unthreatening kind of capacity. And that's how we look at the that other community that we run. And the resume and those kinds of conversations come into play after the fact, where we know that there might be potential fit for a role. We may not necessarily know where that person fits, but we just know that they're fantastic. And being able to understand where they would fit based on their background is that conversation that happens after the fact. And we look at their LinkedIn profile a little closer. Maybe they'll flip us over a copy of their resume. That helps us to really connect the dots a little bit better once we've gotten to know one another in a little bit of a different way.
And do you at all score the LinkedIn profile or the resume in any way?
We're not that formalized in our approach. For the resume process, when we're going through the traditional experience, as we do with a lot of our roles, we do have candidates go through a bit of a short, quick assessment that is based on our values as an organization. If they don't pass that, they get eliminated out of the process and the experience from our applicant tracking system. But it's not a hard and fast kind of approach, because we're still validating whether the data makes sense and whether we're hiring people that are really aligning with our values, that you can also do through a conversation with the leader and getting to know that person over a period of time. Through our applicant tracking system, having that one little step in place allows us to get rid of some of the mass volume that we get. At the organization that I'm at, we had, I think, over 50,000 applications last year alone. So having to navigate that volume of applications and resumes, it helps us kind of eliminate those that immediately may not be a direct fit, but it's not our hard and fast, absolutely must go through that to assess whether someone's a fit for our values.
So you have candidates go through a questionnaire where you're testing their values, whether their values match the organizational values. Are there any other assessments other than the questionnaire that you utilize?
So we are piloting one right now. It's with a local company here in Calgary. It's a sister duo that have basically created this very visual, values-based assessment tool for recruitment. And what we are doing right now in one of our groups is we're going to be piloting it out starting in, I believe, October of this year is when we're going to be looking at it. And it's not for every single role. It will be for primarily leadership roles and those roles that require a little bit of a different lens in terms of the qualities that we're looking for and seeking in that particular person. And what it is the person comes into, it's a face-to-face process. It doesn't eliminate some of the upfront pieces with respect to the pre-screening or that recruiter connection. But what it is once you get to the interview process, an individual comes into a room and they have a number of cards and visuals to choose from, cards with words and visual pictures that they can use to describe their answers to particular questions that are very values based. So we'll ask them a question like, tell me what a perfect day looks like for you. And that person will pick particular words or visuals to demonstrate that. And what it is actually allows individual candidates to tap into a different side of their brain in their recruitment process. So it's not about behavioral based questions that may or may not basically touch on someone's ability to game the system in some way. They're really pulling on people's true lived experience and the things that they're actually really, really passionate about. And the group that we're working with, they have this software that they've created where you can plug and play essentially the results and really assess whether that person would be a fit for the particular role that you're hiring for. It's a little bit of a different process. It's based in a little bit of behavioral science. It's based in how much the leader really understands what it is that they're looking for and understands the dynamics of their team. It's something that we're piloting it out. We haven't, like I said, quite started it yet, but it's something that we're excited about utilizing and trying out because it brings a more human perspective and a human lens to the recruitment process that a traditional interview process that people don't necessarily show up in their best way because they're nervous and they're uncomfortable. They're maybe regurgitating answers that they've practiced and try to make sure that they rehearsed really, really well. It eliminates all of that to really get to the heart of who somebody is and what they really value and where they will actually shine. So that's one example of an assessment process that we'll be utilizing and testing out to see whether or not it will actually be something we can scale or something that might just be in pilot stage that never goes beyond that.
You and I will have to have another interview in 6 months or a year, and you got to let me know how it sounds. Very interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So yeah, we're not exactly sure how it will play out across. They're going to go.
Okay, so yeah, hold on. We're seeing how we did so well. Okay, I think we're good to go.
Yeah.
How do you go about, now you mentioned one of your questions, which was tell us about, sorry, your ideal day, or what was that? How did you phrase that? Sorry?
Yeah, describe what an ideal or perfect day looks like for
So
you
how
at
do you
work.
go about formulating those questions? And do you have a standard set of questions that you ask all candidates and then you customize them depending on the position? If so, could you give us a couple examples of what those questions are?
Yeah, so for that particular assessment tool, it's on a role by role basis and really dependent on what the leader specifically needs with respect to the dynamics that they currently have on the team. That wouldn't necessarily change though if it's looking at a more traditional process. It's really understanding the role as well as the team and what the leader is actually seeking in the candidate. So a lot of the baseline questions are really focused on the organization, why someone is interested in working for that organization. The thing that we like to think of ourselves as being very special, and we love the idea of candidates that have done their homework and done their research on why they're considering applying with us. We definitely see those candidates that will apply to anything and everything, and we want to eliminate that sort of crapshoot approach to how someone is looking for a job, where we think we're putting up a lot of investment and energy into how we're branding ourselves and how we're marketing the position. We want people who are really invested in making sure they're making the right decision and they're mindful. And so it's always that baseline question around, why did you pick this particular company? What about the role is interesting or enticing for you? Some of my favorite questions are really around the things in the work environment that allow someone to truly thrive. So do they need to be working in an environment that's very collaborative? Do they like to be working independently? We're an organization that's very results focused. And so we like to say you can work from anywhere as long as you're getting results, and anytime, anywhere is sort of the way we look at things. And so we want to make sure that we're finding candidates that align with that in the sense that they are autonomous and self-directed and have the ability to thrive in a very flexible environment. I love to know like what makes someone jump out of bed every single day. Like what is it that really drives them and motivates them to get up every single day and do their best work. I love to know about people's leadership experiences in terms of the best leaders that they've worked with and the worst leaders that they've worked with. So we can kind of get an understanding of around whether or not that person will fit within that team and that dynamic. And there's other things around results focus and accountability. A lot of the questions that I focus on like in this organization, thankfully, there's a lot of alignment with my personal values and the organization's values. And so it's really understanding whether that person can thrive within our environment by asking questions that are very values-based, asking about examples of things that they do or have done in their past that demonstrate an alignment to the values that we have as an organization.
You gave us a whole bunch of sort of favorite questions. Do you have a favorite question that no matter what kind of interview you conduct, you always throw this one in?
I love the what motivates you to do your best work. I think that it goes back to that whole concept of what's your why. And if people aren't clear on the things that motivate them, or if it's purely driven by status or financial gain, I don't think this is an organization or any of the ones that I've represented in the past that they would really thrive within. So really understanding whether that person is driven by making an impact is big for me. And so that doesn't change no matter what organization I've recruited for. And it's particularly important for the one that I'm in right now.
Absolutely. When you're having an interview with an individual, what are some sort of good feelings or good omens that you in an interview that you're, yeah, this is a candidate we're looking for would be a good fit for us? What are some of the key features that you're looking for during that interview?
Yeah, it's a great question. That is probably my number one thing is, do they ask really good questions? If they don't ask questions or good questions related to the actual work and the impact of the work and the challenges and the different things that really give them a very holistic perspective on what does a day-to-day really look like, and what are the things that I'm going to come across as a person in this role that may not be obvious based on the interview process. If they're not asking those questions, it makes me wonder whether or not they're critically thinking about the role being the right fit for them. And to me, that often says that they're perhaps going to take anything that comes to them, and they're going to walk into the position and it's probably going to look a lot different than what they expected. And so if they're not asking those critical questions and engaging and really understanding whether it's the right fit for them, that's a huge, huge red flag. And if they are, and they're asking great critical questions, it means that they have enough awareness and confidence in themselves and enough experience to know that they deserve to be working in an organization that matches the things that they're really looking for.
So what are some of your other red flags then?
Other red flags are giving a lot of vague answers and not being able to necessarily provide specific examples or things that really connect the dots for us. So we have a lot of folks that try to sort of talk about things from a very high level perspective and not necessarily give the details around their particular impact or how they actually contributed to an end result. And that's a really big red flag for me.
Absolutely. So you've done your interviews, you've screened your candidates, you have 5 great candidates that all 5 of them could do the job. How do you make a decision?
Oh, it's a tough one.
Yeah.
I think from a leader's perspective, I think about the person that I feel like I can make the most impact on, that will also make the most impact on the organization. So even if someone is not the most perfect fit, but they have a hunger and a drive, and they've demonstrated a growth mindset through the process, because maybe we've put them through a few obstacles in terms of making them do an assessment or asking them to do a video instead of a traditional resume. But they really have demonstrated hunger because they pushed beyond something that maybe made them uncomfortable. Those are the types of people that I look for. And a lot of times, to be honest, it's a gut feeling. It's a feeling of knowing whether you could lead this person and really drive them to success within the organization. And that's something you almost have to take a bit of a risk on, because you really don't know. There's not really a scientific guarantee that this person is going to be incredibly successful in this role. It's a lot of it is based on, you've done all of the assessments you can do, you've asked all the questions you can ask. Now it's a bit of a gut feeling process of really feeling out whether you think you can make an impact on that person and whether that person's going to thrive under your leadership. So that's how I also position it with leaders when they're struggling with making that decision, is who do you really think you can make the biggest impact on, and how do you see that person truly contributing? There's also additional layers of the process that you can implement in terms of references and really just digging in a little bit more into that person to understand whether they're the right fit. So maybe you go through a traditional interview process and you're still not sure. Maybe you ask the candidates to do a bit of an assessment, whether it's a written assignment of some sort to understand more about the way that they think, or you're asking them to do some sort of presentation or a pitch to you that will really quickly tell you who's serious about the opportunity and really give you an inside perspective on the way that they actually think.
Absolutely. No, you triggered something, a memory where I had a friend of mine recommend to me that if you ever had a difficulty choosing a candidate, write the introductory email of each of the candidates that you're about to hire, and who do you have the easiest time writing that introductory email to,
Mm,
and which one are you trying to sell to the organization? And I thought that was kind of a unique sort of decision making mechanism when you're having a really hard time
absolutely.
deciding. So you've mentioned tons of tools throughout our interview. So if you can just sort of summarize some of the tools and technologies that you use on your day-to-day recruitment.
Yeah, so we have our applicant tracking system, which right now the one that I use in the current organization that I'm in is probably one of the most archaic ones that I've ever come across, and it limits
Is
us,
it
but it also
in-house or is it
no
third party?
no
It's third
yeah,
party.
it's a third
Okay, we
party
won't mention
solution.
names.
Yeah, it's a little painful, but I think, all technology, if it's not completely customized to your processes and your needs, it's going to be a little bit like that. So we do have the applicant tracking system. We use HireVue as well, which is a one-way video interviewing platform, primarily for the pre-screening process and not for every single role, for a lot of high volume roles that we're trying to get through a lot of different candidates for. We'll utilize different things like scheduling tools, like I think it's called Candly, just to be able to get things in calendars without having to go back and forth with candidates a million times to book something in. And other than that, I mean, and we have our HR information system. It's Success Factors SAP. We call it MyPath here, and we utilize that, of course, in our onboarding process and for new hires and those things to manage the employee life cycle. But primarily, it's our organization is on the Google suite of products as well. So we do utilize things like our Google Hangout occasionally for interviews when an individual can't make it in person. Try to utilize that technology as much as possible, and different sort of things like the hire view and our applicant tracking system to navigate through the whole process.
Okay, and I had a great question that just escaped me. Um, Oh, yes. Do you still use YouTube videos for some of your positions for candidates to talk about themselves? And if so,
Yeah.
can you just go in a little bit of detail, the philosophy behind it and what you're looking for in those YouTube videos?
Yeah, absolutely. So for our summer student program, which we launched in its first iteration about 3 years ago, we decided that we wanted to really see candidates show up in a very different kind of a way for us. And so we asked all of the individual students to, instead of traditionally uploading a resume and cover letter, to do a video for us instead. And since then, we've evolved the criteria a little bit. So we asked people to tell their story to us in the way that makes most sense to them. So that's not going to be a video for every single person. We also utilize videos in one of our sales teams, the one that utilizes the LinkedIn community, at sort of an entry level point to where we get to know the candidates. We ask them about 3 or 4 questions to really understand a little bit more about who they are. And we ask them to upload a video on YouTube and send us the link just because it's the easiest, most efficient way for us to do it. And the philosophy behind that is, first of all, eliminating those individuals that are applying to every single role that they can possibly think of that looks remotely connected to what they do or what they might do. As soon as you put a bit of a criteria around having to upload a video and put yourself out there a little bit, you notice a huge drop off of people that are actually not that interested in your organization or the role, or they actually just didn't even read the job posting at all. And so it's a great elimination tool for us to really cut down to the people that are the most interested and most connected to what we're trying to do. And then the things that we really look for are, did they go above and beyond? Did they push themselves out of their comfort zone, but show up really authentically? I've had to do it myself for a role within ATB. And for someone who's asked candidates to do that multiple times, it was incredibly uncomfortable for me. But I demonstrated a bit of resourcefulness and I went and found an app online that was free that did include a watermark on the video, but I asked to be forgiven for that because I didn't want to actually physically be in the video, but I wanted to express myself and my story. And I used that app to just use photos, and it was like a slideshow type of a video and a voiceover, which worked great. And it was a really great way for me to demonstrate who I was as a candidate without actually physically having to be on video and get really awkward as soon as you put a video camera in front of me. As much public speaking as I do, it just completely eliminates all of my common sense and my ability to articulate myself when you put a video camera in front of me like that. So we definitely demonstrate, see people who demonstrate their hunger and their passion for the opportunity, and that demonstrate that growth mindset and that ability to push themselves out of their comfort zone, which is incredibly important for the organization that I work for, because we don't want individuals who are sort of stagnated by their desire to not grow and develop and challenge themselves. And it's a really great way to test that pretty quickly.
Well, you're definitely on the cutting edge and doing a lot of unique things that most organizations wouldn't even think about doing. What are some of the other kind of trends or developments that you see in recruitment that you're thinking maybe you might want to use in the future, or you're just noting that oh, that's interesting. I wonder how that's going to pan out.
Yeah, so one of the most disruptive, I think, pieces of hiring technology that we're seeing coming up is the HireVue platform. So it's the one-way video interviewing tool, and it's quite a suite of a solution in terms of providing the opportunity for organizations to also utilize an artificial intelligence function within that platform. And it's interesting because it talks about actually eliminating bias through the process, where it focuses on a number of different things with respect to the way in which someone speaks, their facial expressions. It assesses the candidates for you. So you're not necessarily having to do that based on things that might be unconscious to you as a hiring leader, as a recruiter, that you might be seeing on the screen. It's something that we're keeping an eye on. We are potentially looking to implement it within the organization in a pilot function within the next year, to see if it actually connects to quality of hire. But it's something that I know a lot of organizations do utilize. I don't know how successful it is versus what they tell you it is versus the reality of how it would fit within an organization like mine, that is very much values driven and focused on trying to find that authentic connection factor with people. But it's something that I think is coming. It's artificial intelligence is an emerging technology, or it's a technology. It's not even emerging anymore. It's reality for us. It's supposed to help reduce time to hire and create a lot more efficiencies through the process. And it's something that I'm super curious about, to see if it does somehow, create more of a connection opportunity, or if it eliminates that altogether. Makes me a little bit nervous because I'm a recruitment professional that is very much about that authentic connection and making sure that people feel like they can truly be themselves through the process. And I'm not sure that aligns with it, but it's the wave of the future, and we're trying to figure out how it fits within the organization.
No, absolutely. I remember reading an article recently where a company implemented artificial intelligence, and the system pretty much wiped out all diversity in the organization, and it's only focused on a specific type of candidate. And they had to turn off the artificial intelligence because they were looking for diversity and that sort of thing. So it's a double-edged sword. It's gonna, I believe artificial intelligence is a partnership and a hybrid, and that there's gonna have to be, for a very long time, a human element overseeing it and checking into it, because the worst thing that you can do is set something on automation and never sort of check back onto it. Any sort of last and final tips, tricks, recommendations, advice for future recruiters and individuals that are going to be looking for people in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just leaving you guys with this idea that recruitment is an incredibly fulfilling, incredibly challenging and dynamic sort of career path that you can take within HR. And the best part about it, I think, is that it's so ripe for disruption. It's really ready for more HR professionals that desire to add value through that human-centered lens, and really bringing things back to the humanity of connection, and making sure that there's an opportunity for the business to understand that you can't just talk about recruitment being really important and then not invest energy and time into your own leadership and the way in which you might be looking at bringing candidates on board, but you really, as a recruitment professional, have a lot of opportunity to influence the direction of an organization, how competitive and how successful a company can be is really based in how well they hire and attract talent into the organization. And there's a lot of opportunity for influence, and primarily through looking at things from that perspective of automation is great, but how do we ensure that, like you said, that there's a partnership between the automation, but also that human-centered perspective. And I think it's a really interesting and engaging career path if you want to look at things from a different lens, and there's a lot of opportunity for that.
That's a great way to end. Is there anything that you would like for students to know, anything you'd like to plug before we say our goodbyes?
No, but if anyone's ever interested in connecting, learning more about my recruitment career path, or just kind of picking brains and sort of connecting in that capacity, I'm always super open to that. I love connecting and learning about students and their sort of journey into recruitment. And I'm very active on social media. You'll find me all over LinkedIn, so feel free to connect anytime.
Awesome. And thank you so much for spending the afternoon with me.
No problem.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching the interview. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and click on notifications so you don't miss the next one.